This is by far the furthest I've ever gone when it comes to trying to uncover update content before it comes out. And I gotta be frank, the most fun I've ever had doing so. It seems like the dev team really put a lot of effort into this storyline, if indeed what I found is correct. Today we are heading into part 2 of speculation for this next update, where we'll be discussing another brawler coming out with this update, while on top of that we should be able to confirm this next update themes and element within it even more with the info that I found out today. So of course, if you guys find this info useful here today, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We got a ton of update stuff coming out right around the corner. Update hype! So where we last left off in part number 1, we uncovered the new theme for this next update, or at least what I think it should be. While on top of that, discussing one of the newest brawlers coming out should be fitting within the Buzz family, given the context of the theme that we should be going into. But today, oh boy, we are going into Overdrive, and that is the incredibly fun story of the second brawler coming out. Believe it or not, we already have a fair bit of info on what the brawler should be like, and I believe the dev team put a ton of effort into this second brawler coming out and the backstory behind it related to this theme coming out. So I think we can all agree some of the newest skins that came to the game here recently are incredibly cool, and I'm specifically talking about the Greek god skins here. If you're active on social media or you've just been playing Brawl Stars here recently, you'll have noticed that these skins have been trickling out here these last few days. This storyline that's being told with the reoccurring photos of these Greek god skins are the vehicle for sneak peeking one of the newest brawlers coming out with this update. The very first sneak peek that we got of this brand new brawler was with the conclusion of this fun storyline being told with the release of these Greek god skins, and that was the final skin, Zeus Brock. And as you can see, we have here in the lower left hand corner a very important detail. I would say we have a hand with a hammer working on the Zeus Brock statue of stone. Now the location that we're at here with these skins is of course on Mount Olympus, right? It's a completely new environment that we're not used to here when it comes to the Brawl Stars universe. Of course, when you're at a place much like Mount Olympus, that would mean you're in the presence of gods. Really, the only exception that we have here to this is Bull fitting in here randomly. Throughout all the photos and animations promoting these skins coming to the game here in Mount Olympus, the only skins present are those depicting Greek gods, with of course, once again, the exception of Bull here, which I believe is a little bit of a caveat, fitting a very cultural scene from a movie which I'm sure you guys are probably aware of, but that is 300, where the Spartan king kicks down the messenger, into the deep dark pit. So I think that's just a goofy narrative, not necessarily a random person making it into Mount Olympus. So I think it should be implied that the only other person here that isn't defined, right, outside of Bull and the Greek god skins is somewhat important. This is most definitely screaming sneak peeks for a brand new brawler, but on top of that, seeing that they're in Mount Olympus, it should be assumed that this brawler is also a god. And since we're here on Mount Olympus, it's also very important to point out before we take a deep dive into this new brawler and what they're like, that every single one of these Greek god skins here are depicting a different Greek god up here on Mount Olympus. We have Brock being Zeus, we've got Nani being Ares, the god of war, we've got Max as Hermes, of course in the name, and then we have Cerberus Tick, also tied to Greek mythology. But seeing this brawler is in the presence of these skins depicting different Greek gods here in Mount Olympus in the skies, it should be implied that this new brawler is also associated with this kind of theme or environment, also being potentially a Greek god. So with a lot of the importance surrounding this update when it comes to speculation, especially being seen in part 1 surrounding this volcano vibe, of course I started when trying to figure out what this brawler might be like or based on by googling the Greek god of volcano. I personally don't know a whole lot about Greek god mythology and facts and stuff like that, but what I ended up finding is super compelling. So the top result that came up was Hephaestus. Things are going to start getting a little bit wild, but let me tell you what, I promise it's going to connect and make sense here. So I started doing a bit of digging on Hephaestus here, and what I ended up finding out was super interesting. As you can see here, Hephaestus is the god of fire, volcanoes, metalworking, stone masonry, forges, the art of sculpture, technology, and blacksmiths. As a smithing god, Hephaestus made all the weapons of the gods in Olympus. He served as a blacksmith of the gods and was worshipped in a manufacturing and industry centers of Greece. Hephaestus felt like a building god. He could do anything with his hands and create anything when it came to, blacksmithing, metalworking, carpentry, and he was also responsible for crafting a lot of the weaponry and armory for all the Greek gods in Olympus. A lot of this was incredibly interesting reading through, especially the parts that he is somewhat connected to volcanoes, being a volcano god, amongst other things. But as you read on, things started making a bit more sense and even more interesting. Getting to this point here, Hephaestus' symbols are a smith's hammer, anvil, and a pair of tongs. I read in several different areas online that Hephaestus is depicted in a lot of artwork and places of worship with a hammer working on something, much like he's doing in this picture here. But the cool stuff does not stop there. Here in Wikipedia, there's a section Volcano God, outlining that he is closely tied to volcanoes where he would use them as his smithing workshops. When looking into Hephaestus' relationships with volcanoes, I stumbled across Mount Etna here and his close ties to it, and a fun story that accompanies his relationship with Mount Etna. Even the Greeks told mythological tales of Mount Etna, and they have come to the present day. The tale of Hephaestus' forge, for example, is one of them. Hephaestus was thrown out of Mount Olympus after a bad argument with Jupiter. He literally fell on a lovely island, creating a deep hole in a high mountain. He then decided to use that mountain as his blacksmith forge, and that is why Etna now explodes with fire sparks. The super fun connection with Hephaestus and his relationship with volcanoes don't stop there. In many works of art, Hephaestus is seen working among fire and billowing towers of smoke. He had several workshops, but one of his most iconic workplaces was at the volcanic Mount Etna. And this Mount Etna wasn't the only volcano that Hephaestus used as his blacksmith workshop. Hephaestus' favorite place in the mortal world after getting cast down from Mount Olympus from the other Greek gods for having a birth defect, I believe, which is pretty dang cruel. But it says his favorite island was Lemnos, which I know I'm gonna kill these pronunciations, but you guys gotta stick with me. Where he liked to dwell among the Sintians. Make sure to keep that in mind. Also an incredibly important bit of details when it comes to his relationship and this Brawl Stars update, but he also frequented other volcanic islands such as Leopari, Heria, Limbros, and Sicily, which were called his abode or workshops. So this man was using volcanoes, and a lot of them, for his blacksmith workshops, which is nuts. And another really interesting bit of info that I really enjoyed was the tale of how he was kicked out of Mount Olympus and where he landed after getting kicked out, on an island in a volcano itself. It's super interesting given the build up and the connection with the most recent storyline with the Greek god skins that came out in Brawl Stars, and the sneak peek that we got here for one of the newest brawlers. I think it has very deep ties with Hephaestus, or at least his story, basically creating a brawler surrounding the vibes of Hephaestus, right? His storyline, having a model to go after. Now, as eerie as this connection is already with Hephaestus and what we've been seeing from certain sneak peek photos here depicting things that would make sense resembling Hephaestus and his backstory, things started getting even more insane when I started looking into other things, much like the Sintians. Among the tale with Hephaestus getting kicked out of Mount Olympus, it is said that he was flung down from the heavens by Zeus, and he fell for an entire day, landing on the island of Lemnos, which we had seen from a different website that he landed on Mount Etna, creating a volcano and later turning that into his very first workshop. But things start getting really interesting here. He falls in Lemnos, where he is cared for and taught to be a master craftsman by the Sintians, an ancient tribe native to the island. Now, I almost dang near fell out of my seat when I read more about the Sintians here. From ancient Greek, Sintians were known to the Greeks as pirates. and raiders. So after getting kicked out of Mount Olympus and falling to Earth, he was cared for by the Sentients, who were known as pirates, bro. Look guys, I can kind of argue with a few different fun connections, much like, you know, a Greek god being related to a volcano and that volcano having a key element within this very next update. But when these connections start to compile here over and over again, it starts getting kind of wild. Not only do we have a skilled craftsman here being depicted as one of the new brawlers, and much like we see with descriptions of Hephaestus on certain artworks, he's almost always shown with a tool of some sort, a lot of the time being a hammer. But it's also incredibly interesting, on top of those already amazing connections that we've just talked about, that where he landed creating this volcano, the people who cared for him were considered by the Greeks as pirates and plunderers, which, as we can see in a photo that we've seen countless times here on this channel already and discussed quite heavily in the first episode here, that the pirates are quite close by in the vicinity to this update theme and the volcano itself, to the point where we have speculated heavily that pirates would be involved in this update once it would come out, based on a bunch of different pieces of evidence. Much like this photo here, we have a pirate ship down here, while at the same time we have a pirate ship on the far left and a pirate skull, almost as if this is the entrance to the island where the Sentients were native to, where the Greek god Hephaestus fell and created this volcano. It's just so convenient. But then on top of those pirate connections, we had more relating potentially to this summer update, which we believe to be at the time. We had this Supercell made campaign titled Make a Pirate Life for Surge, where the campaign background, what the Brawl Stars dev team was looking out of a skin with Surge to fit in a future update theme, was stated here. We all know Surge loves a good party, and no one else parties harder than pirates. So it's up to you to create his looks for it. Master Gunner Surge, Sailor Surge, or even a cursed deep sea Captain Surge. Now get your hook ready and start designing. Which of course the winner of this campaign was Kraken Surge. The compounding evidence is almost too much now at this point, with what we already discussed in part 1 of the speculation for this next update, with the crazy amount of sneak peeks leading us into this potential volcano theme here coming around the corner that stemmed months ago now. At this point, building up to this, it would also make sense to have a really interesting cryptic story for a brawler fitting into this theme that the dev team would possibly consider us trying to figure out. And then the final somewhat interesting relationship with Hephaestus to Brawl Stars that I thought I'd bring up with you guys before we move along to additional info for this new brawler and what they might be like in Brawl Stars was this aspect over here on Wikipedia. Automations. According to Homer, Hephaestus built automations of metal to work for him or others. This included tripods with golden wheels, able to move at his wish. He made things such as servants, handmaidens wrought of gold in the semblance of living maids. They moved to support Hephaestus while walking. Incredibly compelling when we take a look at some of the key aspects inside of Brawl Stars being robots when it comes to the lore of Brawl Stars and just Brawl Stars in general. Being littered with robots, right? It might be a bit more of a looser connection, but still interesting enough to take note of. Maybe Hephaestus or this brawler has some sort of hand in the creation of the robots inside of Brawl Stars. But as we're nearing the end of this episode here today, we have one more important bit of info that we need to discuss, and that was with the photo that came out advertising the 15-win challenge here recently. Of course, we are now in the time where sneak peeks are abundant and should be present within photos that are coming out whenever they do here, as we're getting closer and closer to this Brawl talk. So a lot of people are believing that these moving flails in the background are related to this Hephaestus brawler coming out, possibly him having this weapon. We can also see other imagery. It looks like a potential other flail down here, so maybe like a dueling double flail brawler here, which is kind of like gruesome if you ask me for a weapon for a brawler. But it wouldn't surprise me at this point. I don't think necessarily a new brawler, if it is like potentially Hephaestus, doesn't have to be like one for one what a Hephaestus would be like. It's just a fun story or a depiction fiction that they base this new Brawler off of. But at the end of the day, we'll just have to wait and see, and I'm assuming we will be getting even more sneak peeks and things like that we can keep up with here with these upcoming days. But yeah, that is just about all I got for you guys here in this episode today. There is so much interesting stuff when it comes to speculation and trying to piece this update together here during its earlier stages, and I am here for it. This is the stuff I live for when it comes to Brawl Stars update, these deep, rich lore and stories here to try to uncover, and hopefully you guys are eating it up as well. Of course, if you did enjoy yourself or found it interesting or useful, be sure to slap a like on it. I really appreciate that. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. Keep on following Brawl Stars, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Adios and take care.